She walked into that bar like any other night, confident, quiet, and just trying to unwind after a long week. The laughter of strangers echoed around her, glasses clinked, and for a brief moment, she forgot how the world often treated women who looked like her. But that moment of peace didn't last. At the far end of the bar, a man in uniform watched her, his sharp eyes hidden behind years of authority and arrogance. A Navy SEAL captain, someone used to commanding silence with his presence. He approached her, not with kindness, but with the weight of superiority. NNHE leaned closer, his tone cold and mocking, demanding something that made the whole room freeze, her call sign. She looked at him, confused, because she wasn't one of his soldiers. She was just a woman trying to enjoy her night. But the captain didn't see her as a person. To him, she was a challenge, a target. When she refused to play his twisted game, the laughter stopped. The air thickened. Then, without warning, he picked up his drink and threw it right in her face. The room gasped, but no one moved. Not the bartender, not the crowd. The ice in the glass matched the shock in her veins as she stood there, drenched and trembling, her pride soaking into the floor. What happened next turned a simple night into a national outrage, a confrontation that exposed something far uglier than one man's ego. It revealed how deep racism still runs in places we pretend it doesn't exist. Because this story isn't just about humiliation in a bar, it's about what happens when silence becomes the loudest weapon of all. Her name was Danielle Carter, a 32-year-old communications officer at a local tech firm in Virginia Beach. Smart, composed, and known among her friends for never letting the world's prejudice break her stride. On weekdays, she worked long hours in a glass building that looked out to the ocean. On weekends, she found peace in the small things. A morning jog, a quiet coffee by the water, or a casual evening out with her coworkers. Danielle wasn't an activist or a celebrity. She wasn't chasing attention. She was just a woman trying to exist freely, to be seen for her talent, not her skin. But in her world, even ordinary moments carried a shadow. The subtle stares, the forced smiles, the tiny comments that others brushed off but stayed with her for days. NNTHAT Friday evening, her team had decided to unwind after a demanding project. The bar they chose wasn't new. It was known for its live music and Navy clientele. Danielle hesitated for a moment when she heard that detail, but her colleagues assured her it was friendly, safe, and upscale. So she went. NNTHE night began like any other. Laughter, chatter, and soft jazz playing in the background. But as the hours passed, Danielle started noticing how certain eyes followed her every move. Not curious, calculating. Especially one man, sitting alone in uniform, his rank insignia gleaming faintly under the dim lights. When she caught him staring, he didn't look away. He smiled instead, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Something about that look sent a chill down her spine. NNSHE didn't know it yet, but that brief glance across the bar would mark the beginning of a night she would never forget, a night that would test her silence, her strength, and her dignity. The laughter around the bar grew louder as the night aged, but Danielle's focus stayed on the glass of water she'd ordered after her first drink. She didn't want to seem out of place, but she could feel the subtle shift in the room. Conversations that once flowed freely began to falter when she passed. People whispered, laughed quietly, and turned away when she met their eyes. At first, she tried to ignore it. She'd dealt with this before. The silent judgment that came in polite smiles and forced small talk. But tonight, something was different. The tension didn't hide behind civility. It lingered openly in the air. NNTHE man in the uniform. Captain Raymond Hensley hadn't taken his eyes off her. He was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, his medals glinting in the low light. The kind of man who commanded a room by doing nothing at all. His friends, two younger officers, laughed loudly at something he said, their glances shifting toward Danielle again and again. When she finally turned her chair slightly away, trying to block his view, that's when it began. NNTHE captain stood, his boots tapping deliberately against the floor. The sound cut through the music. Slow, steady, like a warning. He made his way toward her table, each step heavier than the last. "Excuse me," he said, his tone sharp, controlled, yet dripping with mock authority. "You're not one of us, are you?" Danielle blinked, uncertain how to respond. "I'm sorry?" NHE smirked. "Your call sign. What is it?" NNSHE froze for a moment. "I don't have one," she replied quietly. NNTHE captain leaned closer, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Everyone here has one. You can't sit among us without a name." "So what do they call you?" NNHI's words weren't a question. They were a test. Around them, the laughter faded into silence. Even the bartender, polishing a glass behind the counter, stopped mid-motion. Danielle tried to smile it off. "I'm not in the service. I'm just here with my friends." NBUT that only fueled him further. He straightened, squaring his shoulders like he was back in command. "Then maybe you should find a place that suits your kind better." NNTHE words hit like a slap. Not loud, not overt, but heavy enough to make her heart pound in her chest. Her friends at the nearby table exchanged nervous glances but said nothing. The air around her thickened, pressing down with the weight of shame and disbelief. NSHE stood to leave, determined not to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. But before she could take a step, his hand shot out, grabbing the edge of her glass. With one swift motion, he hurled the drink at her. The ice struck her cheek, and the cold liquid cascaded down her face, soaking her blouse. Gasps erupted. Someone muttered, "Jesus, man!" But no one moved. No one stood up for her. Danielle stood frozen, trembling, not just from the cold, but from the crushing silence that followed. She could feel every eye on her, every heartbeat echoing in her ears. And then she saw the captain's smirk. That satisfied, dismissive smirk that told her this wasn't just about alcohol, it was about power. NNSHE picked up her bag with shaking hands, turned toward the door, and walked out, her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots in the silence. NNBUT. The story didn't end there. Outside, under the buzzing neon light, she stopped. The night air hit her face, sharp and unforgiving. Tears blurred her vision, but behind them was something stronger, something that burned. Not NTHAT was the moment everything changed. Danielle Carter wasn't going to let this night end quietly. The night air outside the bar was sharp, carrying the salt of the nearby ocean and the bitter taste of humiliation that clung to Danielle's skin. Her shirt was still damp, her hands trembling as she tried to steady her breath. The cold wasn't just from the drink, it was from the realization that she had just been assaulted, and no one cared enough to stop it. Behind her, the bar door opened again. For a second, her heart jumped. Part fear, part fury. It was him. Captain Hensley stepped out, his laugh low and cruel, echoing off the empty street. His friends followed, their voices slurred with alcohol and arrogance. "Hey," he called out, mockingly. "You forgot your pride back there." Danielle froze. Every instinct told her to walk away, to avoid becoming another statistic, another headline that began with "Black woman confronts officer" and ended in tragedy. But something inside her shifted. The same silence that had followed her all her life, in offices, in classrooms, in bars like this, suddenly became unbearable. NNSHE turned around. For the first time, she met his stare without flinching. "You think you can humiliate me because of that uniform?" she said quietly, her voice steady but trembling with rage. "Because you wear medals and I wear melanin?" NTHE's smirk vanished. His jaw tightened. He took a step forward. "You should be careful who you talk to like that," he hissed. "I've been careful my whole life," she replied. "And look where it's gotten me." NFOR. A heartbeat. The world felt still, the ocean waves crashing in the distance, the hum of a passing car, the heavy air between them. Then Hensley reached for her, grabbing her arm, gripping it hard enough to leave marks. NNBUT this time. Danielle didn't shrink. She pulled her phone from her pocket, hit record, and stared him dead in the eyes. "Go ahead," she whispered. "Show them who you really are." NTHAT single act, a trembling hand holding a phone, shattered his dominance. His friends froze. For the first time, his confidence cracked. In that moment, the power shifted. Danielle walked away, tears streaming down her face, but her back straight. Because this time, the world would hear her story, and she wasn't going to let anyone silence it again. The video Danielle recorded that night spread faster than she could have imagined. By morning, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages poured in, some from strangers offering support, others from people who said her courage gave them strength. The clip had gone viral. A decorated Navy SEAL captain confronting an unarmed black woman, his arrogance captured in crystal clarity. NNFOR years. Men like him had hidden behind medals, respect, and silence. But this time, the silence broke. Within 48 hours, national news outlets had picked up the story. Headlines flashed across screens, and Virginia Beach SEAL captain under investigation after racial harassment incident. And public outrage surged. The Navy released a statement promising accountability, though the words felt too polished, too rehearsed. But Danielle didn't care about their public image. She cared about truth. NNSHE didn't do interviews at first. She didn't need to. The video spoke for itself. It captured everything. The drink, the humiliation, the fear, and the strength it took for her to stand her ground. NBUT behind that viral moment was a woman still healing. Danielle struggled to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the glass shatter, saw the disbelief on people's faces, felt the sting of cold liquid on her skin. But now, when she woke in the middle of the night, she reminded herself, I didn't stay silent. Weeks later, the captain was suspended pending investigation. Some called it justice. Danielle called it a start. Because justice isn't just punishment, it's awareness. It's the conversation that happens after the cameras stop rolling. One evening, she returned to that same beach near her office, the place where she used to find peace before the world reminded her of its cruelty. The sunset glowed gold on the horizon, waves whispering against the shore. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not because it was over, but because her voice had been heard. NNHER's story became a symbol, not of pain, but of defiance. Of a woman who refused to be reduced to another forgotten name, and as her video continued to spread, sparking debates, protests, and change, one question lingered in the hearts of everyone who watched NNIF Courage Can Expose Injustice. This clearly. What would happen if silence finally ended for good?